Let's go. Are we actually on? You're here listening with Kayla
and Georgia,
bringing you real, raw, and relatable chats on the Evolve to Thrive podcast.
Stay tuned because shit's about to get juicy as we dive into all things health, fitness, life, and relationships.
Let's go. Woo. Before we get into today's episode, we do have a short disclaimer. This episode contains discussions about mental health, domestic violence, abuse, and suicide. This content may be triggering for some listeners. If you or someone you know is struggling with these issues, please consider skipping this episode or listening with caution.
If you need support, please reach out to the following helplines that are listed in the show notes. Your mental health matters and this help is there available. Please don't hesitate to assist.
All right, let's get started with the episode. So we do have a remarkable guest joining us today, Mr. Mickey Kennedy. Woo!
Welcome.
Now, Mickey is an absolute powerhouse of resilience. So we are here to showcase his personal journey and unlock the power of his incredible mindset because he really is an inspiration.
Absolutely.
And before we do get into introducing him, I just want to preface as well that our mission of today is to normalize mental health conversations and also inspire everyone to embrace a mindset of growth and abundance. So I know that a lot of people will take so much value from this, and I'm really excited to get into it. So let's introduce you. Hey,
How are you
Mickey.
today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. It's been a long time coming.
It has.
So I'm very grateful to be here and very overwhelmed by the the opening. Hope I can live up to the expectations.
Oh, you absolutely will. Absolutely will. Let's get started into our first segment of the episode. So usually each week we do either a craving or a tip of the week. So do you have a craving that you've had for the week or a tip, any bit of motivation or advice you want to give to anyone?
I'm just going to go with craving because even right now it's on the top of my head. I'm just thinking about it. Just a Yochi. Like,
100%.
Yochi for sure.
What's your go-to?
Look, it's all about the ratios, and I learned this very early on because if you just stand there and you just pull it back and you're just like, oh, fuck, this thing now weighs a ton. I'm going to be overcharged. I can't put my toppings in. And so for me, it's just plain. I do a figure eight. And then I put my toppings in and then hot Biscoff sauce.
The hot Biscoff sauce.
It's unreal.
My jaw is literally tingling.
Oh, so good, hey. Like, it's just another level. Like, I was in an account and they literally said, they were like, have you had the hot pot? And I was like, what the fuck's a hot pot?
My heart's gone pizza.
Yeah, literally. I was like, oh, what's a hot pot? And they're like, Biscoff, hot Biscoff. And I was like,
Say less.
What's
the minimum that you spend every time you go there? Because for me, it's minimum $20 every single time.
Yeah, it's fucking expensive, hey.
Yeah.
It'd be between 20 and probably, I'd say 15 and 20. Because now I've got the ratios of the yogurt.
You've got it sorted out.
Yeah, I've got it sorted. It's because it's one of those things. Like, I was watching people go through and I was like, man, these guys are spending 15 and 20 and it's like 3 or 4 people at a time. I'm like, how much do these motherfuckers make?
Yeah,
like,
Good business.
Good business.
Yeah.
What about you, George? What are you craving or tipping for today?
I think I want to do a tip of the week.
Yeah.
I was actually on Instagram and Amy Megnar posted this podcast that she's been listening to. It's called The Lazy CEO. And I've started listening to that and it's really good. She basically just interviews all these entrepreneurs around Australia. And it's really, really good. I'm loving that at the moment.
Right.
Binge listening.
Binge. Love my podcast episodes.
All right. I've been getting into my reading and I reckon, Mickey, you've inspired me to get into my reading this year. And I actually think you gave me this book recommendation and it is to understand men a little bit more.
Yes.
So I have been getting into the book that is Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus.
Oh, yes.
And it's actually a very helpful book because it really understands conflicts, like common conflicts in relationships and what you think that the male is thinking, but it's not what they're doing. And you're like, oh, now I understand why they don't talk.
Yeah, 100%.
Now I understand why they run away. Like I actually get it now. Anyway, so that is my book recommendation for today.
Love it.
Yeah,
Love it.
cool.
Perfect.
But Mickey, we are here to talk about you today and we want to find out a little bit more. We want the listeners to know who the hell you are.
Yep.
So tell us, who are you? What do you do?
Yes.
Inform them.
Take us back to the start.
Okay. So are we talking about me now or are we talking how I got here?
Let's give just a brief overview. Who you are right now. What do you do? Who do people know you for?
Okay. So first of all, I think anybody that knows me knows that I am married with my beautiful wife, Ashley. Means the world to me. And I am living my mother's legacy out that didn't get to finish her days out. And I am a national sales manager of Primabolics. And I'm a man that wears their heart on a sleeve and is very willing and open to being vulnerable, raw, and authentically themselves.
And that's exactly what we're going to get out today.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. How would your friends describe you in 3 words?
Cockbag. That's very true. I think the biggest thing that my friends would be able to say is that, like, it doesn't matter what time of the day it is, I'm there because I know what it's like to not have that. And I think any of my close circle, I have a very, very, very tight close circle. They know that they could call me night or day. If they need something, it's there. And I think that's probably something that really lacks in this world is knowing that you've got someone and actually got, like, having someone that's actually got your best interest, like, you know, calling you out on your bullshit, because everyone's willing to say, oh, I'm their friend when everything's going great. But when you're, you know, messing up and just starting to create bad patterns of behavior, no one's willing to call you out. Like, everyone's like, oh no, here's my friend. I would never say anything. Like, I'm known as the harsh reality.
Yeah.
Right?
Sometimes you find too that, like, when your friends do call you out, sometimes it's on you to be like, okay, yeah, they're right, rather than being like, nah, fuck you, blah, 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 blah.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard to hear. But it's really valuable. Even Georgia and I have this conversation with our friends with each other about our friends quite regularly. And I feel like I have a very similar circle. Like, Matt will call me out on my bullshit all the time.
Sure.
He'll call me a mole. He'll call me, like, all the things. Like, he'll be like, you are actually being a mole. And he'll call me out on it. And it's sometimes I'm like, fuck. And then I'm like, no, he's right.
You need it. I think it's so important.
Yeah. It takes a moment, and I think that's where it really becomes the ego is the enemy, right? Like, it's like you need humility, and a lot of people don't understand that humility is going to be more empowering than ego in any given moment, but it's just how you see it. And I think so many people run the ego because they're like, protect myself, but if you protect yourself, you don't grow, right? Because you grow from the uncomfortable truths. So,
Yeah. Perfect. Well, why don't we take it right back to the beginning to young Mickey?
Yes.
Tell the listeners what it was like for you growing up. What was your childhood like? What was your relationship like with your family? Let's get into it. Okay.
So from birth, I was born with a severe speech impediment and hearing impairment. Hard to believe because I don't shut up now, but it's, I couldn't speak and I wasn't able to learn, and it wasn't right up until about year 2 going into year 3 that it was basically the path was you go this way or you go this way. And my mum was a very big resilient piece in my life. I grew up in a broken home, domestic violence, and I think a lot of, like, how I see things and my emotional EQ is comes from those times, because when you can't speak, you can't, you know, yell for help when there's stuff going on in your household that you probably should be yelling for help. So you just sit there and you freeze, but you see things that other people don't see in the room. And so for me, it wasn't up until that moment where it was like, okay, like, mum used to tell me this story and it was a little engine that could, and I don't know if you have heard that, but it's like one of the most beautiful memories of my mum, because it was the first moment that really set out that I am resilient, right? Like, I will prevail. And I never understood what that lesson was teaching me for later in my life until obviously these days today. But the biggest thing was that, like, I used to try and read and I'd be like, and she'd be like, remember that little engine that could, like, I know I can. And I wouldn't stop, and I'd be full of tears, and fuck, it makes me emotional. And she'd be across from me and she'd be full of tears, and she was the only person that really absolutely believed in me to that, like, right up until she passed. Like, she was the only person that was like, you're going to get through this, you're going to be okay, you can be a good kid, right?
Is that what gets you through every hard day now?
There's an image of my mum. So we didn't have a car, we couldn't afford a car, and we lived probably, I would say, like 20 kilometers away from town. She used to catch the bus in, we'd catch the bus in with her, she'd load up all the groceries and she'd walk back.
Yeah, well,
there's no fucking image that you can see ever that allows you to see when you're at your pain, you're at your weakest moments, you're at your struggling days. I think of her hands like cut open, just almost bleeding. And she did that right up until I was like 16, right? Like, wow. That's resilience.
Yeah.
That's character. Like, that's, people whinge about little shit. Oh, I can't afford fucking to put, you know, a Thanksgiving party on, or a Christmas dinner, or all of this stuff. And it's like, but this woman walked rain, hail, snow with her kids. And the biggest thing with my mum, and the thing that I love the most about her, is that she wore holes in her clothes and she froze to fucking death. So we never had what we wanted, but we always had what we needed.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was always warm. My sister was always warm. We always had what we needed, and she went without. And so from a very young age, this was the theme. Like, you know, I grew up watching mum stress over money. I watched mum, you know, constantly, like from a very young age until dad left, like being beaten. And some of the beatings I watched that woman take, like you just sit there and you just go, fuck, I wish I could speak. You know, I wish I could say something and get this man off her. And, you know, I was a skinny motherfucking kid. Like I was a twig. And I don't have the frame to stop that kind of stuff. And so when you're seeing it and you're just like, just make it stop. So when I finally learned how to speak, I was so far behind the other kids. And I also grew up with a lot of trauma. And so for me, you know, in a household where you're not feeling safe, you become very hypervigilant. So you start to observe everything. And so I become very, very badly bullied because I was obviously so far behind. And I remember one key moment where I knew I was going to get a hiding off one of the kids. And we were it was kindergarten. I remember sitting there. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I can't say anything. I'm struggling. Like I can't even write my own name. Like these kids are all making fun of me. And this one kid just used to always pick on me. I remember sitting there and I'm just thinking to myself, fuck, I'm going to get a hiding. So I tried to get out first. It was too late. And he chased me and I just ran and I ran and I ran and I ran. And he finally got me and I pissed my pants. And I remember them literally standing me up in front of the whole of the front office, just saturated pants. And it just set the tone for my years. Like I was just bullied.
That literally breaks my heart.
Yeah.
You know, I think about it like when I was thinking about this today and I was like, fuck, man, like that little kid just needed a hug.
Yeah.
You know,
Isn't it crazy? It's like, you think about kids in school, because like there was a period of time in school where I got bullied for a bit, and it's just like kids can be so fucking cruel just to try and make themselves feel better, because there's probably shit that they've got going on at their own home as well.
Correct.
And kids can just be so cruel. So cruel.
Yeah. And it's all just to belong, right? Like it's all just to fit in and be the cool one or whatever it may be. So.
Yeah. And how old were you when you lost your mum?
So that was later on. So I'll get to that later because it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But so obviously like continuing on that story. So, you know, really bullied, didn't fit in at school. Like I didn't really feel like I belong, right? And like for a young kid, it's so hard. Like where do you go? And then obviously this leads into probably one of the more traumatic parts of my life, which was a sexual assault. So I was very young and we had a very close family member move in with us. And I think the hardest thing was like, I thought that this was just going to be my best friend. You know, like I genuinely thought like this guy is going to be my best friend. Like I'm going to be safe. I'm going to be protected. I'm going to have someone to share adventures with. And it turned sinister really quick. And I was sexually assaulted multiple times. You know, and the worst part is there's a part to my story I can never tell because it's not my story to tell.
Yeah.
And that's like having a door half open, you know, like that still haunts me. But it reminds me at the same time that I need to share my message, because if that person's not willing to share theirs, I need to share mine. Because other people, after I started talking about this, was like, oh, fuck, look at that guy. Like, I wouldn't think he went through that, you know? And it was like the eye-opener for me that I was like, okay, I can do something with this. So fast forward after that, you know, I started questioning my own sexuality.
How old were you when you actually started talking about all of this?
I was 25.
Like that's what I mean. How long
and how
did
old
it
are you
take?
now?
Yeah.
I think I'm 31.
Yeah.
It's all become a blur in the last few years.
But so you suppressed that for 20 years.
Yeah. I didn't speak about it because it's really hard as a male. Like, you know, you've just been sexually assaulted and you've lost something that you feel should never be taken, whether you're a girl or guy. Like it's the worst thing that can happen. And I think anyone that goes through it, like you feel robbed. And for me now, I'm older, and when I write about it, I had my innocence stolen.
Absolutely.
You know, and that was the worst part. And so it wasn't until I was like 13 and I first seen boobies and I was like, nah, this is it. Like it's game on. Like I know I'm not gay. Like I know my sexuality. Like, okay, like, but I still obviously had a lot of really bad trauma responses, you know. So learning about it now, like my body was shutting down, even though I was, you know, at a very young age sexually active, because I just didn't see anything wrong with it. Like there were certain things I couldn't do, you know, right up until I was older. So it wasn't until I'm pretty sure like my wife was the first person to actually know the full depth of it. And that was because like I felt safe, I felt open, I felt that she wasn't judging. As a lot of other girls would be like, oh, you don't want to do this, like what's wrong with you? And it's like, if I tell you, you're going to think I'm weird. You know? And then everyone always says, they're like, oh, because like what we were talking about, like I wear tan, like I get Botox, I bleach my teeth, like I fucking dye my hair, like everything about me, right, like isn't the typical masculine male. So everyone's like, oh, hang on a second, like do you like sucking dick? Or and I'm like, no, like this is a trauma, right? Like this is what happened to me, not what I asked for. And that was the hardest thing to kind of get through people's heads. So, you know, yeah, that was obviously right up until high school. And so I was severely bullied. Like I could not make mates, like guys especially just could not get along with. And I couldn't hold the friendships down because I couldn't understand the dynamic between male and male. It just was a weird mix. So obviously my emotional spectrum was really off to a typical male as well. Like I was very like, I would cry, I would get very like worked up. And because I grew up in feminine energy, you know, mum was both. Like mum was feminine and masculine, but you only see what you have, right? So, you know, typical males are like, you know, punching on, wanting to punch on, and I'm like just trying to defend myself. And you get caught up in this world. And I think there was one thing that you asked me, and it was like, who is Mickey? And I think Mickey got developed in high school from myself as a way to protect my younger self. And there was a moment where I literally went into high school, the same bully that had ruined my whole fucking primary school, just like come up to me, push me about, and I was like, you know what? I'm fucking sick of this. And my mum said, if someone lays hands on you, like you have my full permission to do what you need to do. So he goes, I'm going to make your life hell. I was like, motherfucker, no, you're not. And I hit him in the head with a bin, and I literally just clobbered him. And I think from this moment, Mickey, become about being the class clown. You know, I just remember being so scared to fail because I'd be laughed at, you know, because I was so far behind the other kids. Like I didn't know my times tables. I didn't know the basics. And I was like, well, if I can make people laugh with me rather than at me, it's better.
As a teacher, I definitely understand what you're saying, because like from that position of being a teacher, you know exactly the kids who are like struggling with their learning. They are the kids that I know a lot of teachers will, like, you know, they kick their kids out of the classroom when they start stuffing around, and it's like you need to like find out what is the trauma of this kid, like why are they showing up that way, because there's a reason. There's a reason why you try and I don't know, disguise that
kids don't know themselves, so they do what they can to try and fit in and to try and try and get that confidence, or just to fit in, really,
just to belong, right?
Just to belong.
It's like now, like everyone wants to belong. Like if you look at most people, like the courage is to be yourself. Like the courage is to just be you, authentically you, show up as you, and if someone doesn't like it, fuck them. It's not my problem, that's your problem. And you know, people go, oh, that's fucking egotistical, that's, you know, you're so confident and cocky. It's like, no, you know what? Like I've hated myself way harder than you can. Like to be at a place where I love myself. Yeah, you know what? Like say what you want to say. I've got small calves. Yeah, bro, fucking oath. I've got absolutely small calves. I wear fake tan. Yeah, dude, I laid in this for 2 hours just to get done.
Fuck yeah, I do.
You know, like I don't give a fuck. Like I get shit all the time. Like, you know, people be like, oh, you get Botox. And I'm like, man, if you knew half of the people that get Botox, but yeah, that's why you can't see I'm literally smiling at you underneath. You know, like I'll just play along with it. You don't know, right? You don't know. Well, mixed bag. So I think that's the thing. It's like these kids just want to belong. You know, we all do. So yeah, I agree with that. And I think moving past that was then when like I become the bully. And it's something that I resent myself so much for, but it was a way of protecting myself. So Mickey was this guy that I created that was like, I'm going to be tough. I couldn't find my way out of a wet paper bag. I'd give it a crack though. Like, and if there was an obstacle, like I was fucking getting around it.
And this is you in high school?
This is me in high school. And then obviously, you know, like the girls card for me was easy because I got along with females. So it wasn't hard for me. So it was like, I got very like interested in females. That was where my attention went, you know, and obviously that got me in a bad situation as well. But then it started to get into like going down the wrong path because, you know, you're the class clown, you don't care. Well, where are you heading? You know, I remember looking at my yearbook and it's like most wanted was my name. And I'm like, fuck man, like now look at it, right? So that's up until high school. And then I left and I tried to get away and I got in worse shit. So yeah.
Because where did you actually grow up?
Orange.
So
where's that?
For the people, for the people that don't know where that is.
Yeah. So like a small country town in New South Wales.
Yeah.
Orange. That's what it's called.
Yeah, Orange. Orange is right next to Bathurst.
Yeah, okay.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah. So
then when did you come to Victoria or Melbourne?
That was my third or fourth move. So what happened after that? So to give you the kind of story of how I got here. So I left, I found drugs, and obviously I have an addictive personality apparently. So, it went from girls to drugs and girls and drugs. And then it just kind of got into a point where it was like I was hanging around the wrong people. And, a lot of these guys, like the shit I was seeing, I'm like, man, I don't want to be a part of this. Like, this isn't what I signed up for. Like, I just wanted to have some fun and have some fun with girls. And now all of a sudden we're doing some really bad shit. So mum brought me home. I got clean and then I found the gym. And then I was like, all right, like this is the first time like I started to see that I was putting my time, my energy and my efforts into something. And I was like, okay, like I need to set goals. And that's when I first set a goal. I was like, oh shit, like I need to work towards something, right? And if I show up every day and I'm consistent, I put in the effort and the energy, I'm going to get a reward for this. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, and then I learned accountability from that. And so I was like, well, what can I do with this? And I was like, well, powerlifting. So, like that's when I got into powerlifting. And it was right before my first ever powerlifting meet, like 3 weeks before, was when I lost my mum. And I remember being at the point in my life where I was starting to finally get my shit together. And me and mum just never seen eye to eye. And I think that's the part that people get so confused, because I speak of her now and I speak of our relationship, but I'm very open and honest when I say I made a lot of mistakes with her. A lot of people dismiss that and they go, but you were young. It's like, no, but I was just a piece of shit. And I'm happy to own that, because if I didn't own that, I wouldn't be who I am today.
What was it that made your relationship so poor back then, do you think?
Mum gave up everything for us kids. She protected us. She gave us, warm clothes when she didn't have them. And all I cared about was being the class clown. And I think it broke Mum's heart that, here's her struggling and I'm just taking it for granted. And I never forget, there was one moment in particular that really just like hits home. And I remember her opening her wallet and there was $5. And I was like, that's mine. And I looked at her and she looked at me and she's like, that's all I have. And I said, I don't care. Like I need lunch to go with the guys to KFC or some shit. And I took the $5. And, obviously all kids do that. But the problem that then started was, as I got older, it started to become more physical. And it started to become more abusive in the sense of like emotional abuse, and mum was older. So my mum was pretty much like a grandparent's age. So a lot of kids when I was at school, they'd be like, oh, your mum's going to die before we finish school. And I'll be like, oh, cool, fine, thanks.
That's
so
terrible.
That's horrible. So you're bullied on every angle. But the one thing that I always used to rub in mum's face was she was poor. I'd be like, you're so poor. Like you fucked my life. Like I didn't ask to be born, like victim mentality, right? But the one thing that just broke her heart was always every time, like I would just stand there and I'd just be like, you're fucking pathetic. What kind of human are you? Like I didn't ask to be born into this shit show. And I look at it now and I just think, fuck man, you turned $5 into a meal every single night. You raised 2 children on a fucking Centrelink wage and gave up everything you had so we could have this life. And here I am being ungrateful.
I think at that age though, like, because how old were you when your mum died?
I was 20. I just turned 20. I was just before my 21st, sorry.
I think as well, like growing up, you probably didn't have the emotional intelligence that you did now. And you probably didn't have the perspective that you do now. So it's like, yeah, you can look back and be like, yeah, I was an asshole, but you didn't have the emotional intelligence that you do now to pull yourself out of that.
100%. And I see that now, but like when mum died, like, so to give the backstory, and this is the way I am, right? And this is what created Mickey, right? The guy that you see in front of you. So I got a phone call and the phone call went to my voicemail because I turned my phone off, and I was living with my girlfriend at the time, and the phone call basically said mum's dead, right? And I remember just going through my voicemails and I was like, fuck, mum's gone. Like, this is it, right? Like, fuck. And I was in shock more than
did you see this coming, or was it an unsuspected
like a sudden?
It was sudden. It was so sudden. And so, like, literally, like, this voicemails, like, just kept going. And then eventually it was like, no, mum's alive. Like, come to ICU, come and see her. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, oh, fuck. Like, it didn't register, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that, it just didn't register. And the worst part was that like 3 days before she died, like, or 3 days before the first time she got revived, was basically like we'd had a fight and she said some really horrible stuff and I said some really horrible stuff and I said, I hope you die of a heart attack, right? And she died of a heart attack. And that's why I'm so big on, like, and you've probably heard it when I'm around Jose, like I'll say to Jose, like every time I see him, I love you. Like I'll always be like, when I leave, I love you. Because you never know when you're going to get the next chance, right? Death has no calendar.
Yeah.
When it arrives, it fucking arrives. And you feel it for what it is. But the thing that makes this so real is when someone's on their deathbed, you're there, standing there, trying to get back the words that you said. And that's when I realized something. It's like your words, when in an argument, are the bullets, right? And they create wounds. And after life, there's no chance to go back and go, okay, I'm not going to say that. That wound is there, but the wound isn't on them. It's on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the part that just gets me the most is for a long time, I didn't sleep, right? Like, and this is why I've been able to get to where I've got to in my career in all elements, because I can't sleep, right? I had PTSD for a very long time. And what it was that when mum died, so she got brought back to life, and then basically we got a phone call saying, like, you've got to come say your goodbyes. And I didn't really expect it to be like this. Like, fuck me. Like, this isn't what I signed up for, right? Like, I'm 20 fucking years of age and I'm walking down a white corridor. And the worst part is, for a very long time, I used to say to one of my mates, I picture this white corridor, an orange light, and I hear screaming, and I know that that's the end. And I don't know what it's the end of, but I know it's the end. And I remember just opening the door.
I got a little bit of goosebumps.
I remember opening that door and just looking at mum. And, you know, mum's cold, purple, hooked up to dialysis. And you're just like, you're gone. Like, there's no, you're not coming back. And
what was running through your mind at that point?
I just wanted her to go in peace. Like, she'd fought so fucking hard to just get through. You know, and there's so much pain in suffering. And I say it to my best mate because, like, he lost his dad in a very different kind of scenario, but like I could never live with the suffering. Like, if I had to watch someone suffer every day, I'm very grateful that, you know, I say this in a respectful way, that she went quickly, because it was fucking awful.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're touching their arms and they're cold and they're purple, and all you're thinking to yourself is like, fuck, mum, like, I just want you to go in peace. And everyone's like, bring her back. And I'm like, what? You're going to bring back someone that can't talk, can't do the things that she loves? She was our backbone. Like, she's not going to do that. We're going to have to look after her, and she's going to hate that. Just let her go peacefully. Like, she served her time. And I remember it, like, it was 9:30 at night. She passed away. We stood in the hallway, and, you know, it was my family, small family that I've got. And they all looked around and they said to my older sister, like, you're going to be okay. And I was like, what the fuck does that mean for me? And that's kind of where Mickey really come alive. Like, this is where the resilience, I was like, all right, I know I can. But the difference was that it was like, I created this mentality that nothing fazed me, right? Nothing could touch me, because if I love and I lose it, like, I'm in debt and I can't pay that back. And so I just become shut off to the world. And while trying to help my brother keep his head above the water, you know, trying to be the glue, but I was just falling apart. And I started realizing really quickly that everything that I was and everything I was becoming wasn't helping me. But at the same time, it was protecting other people that I loved. And then probably the moment that made me shut off the most was I was living with a girlfriend at the time, and her mum hated men that cried. She thought it was a weak expression and she didn't understand it. So I walked in one day and I accidentally drove to mum's house, you know, because these are the things you do. They're habit loops. You know, you just naturally do it, and then you get there and you're like, fuck, man. Or you ring and it's just a dead end, or you get mail, and, you know, there's so many things that just happen, and you're just stuck in this loop and you can't fucking break it. And I walked inside and I had a tear in my eye, and I just remember just grabbing it. And like, I'd never used to really cry as heavy as I got older, because I learned that it just, like, it wasn't safe, right? Like, it wasn't safe. So I used to bottle it up, and I just remember a tear running out of my eye, and I looked up and she just smacked me in the head, and she goes, men don't cry. And from that moment, I just become cold. Like, I was fucking cold. Like, I spent probably 4 or 5 years in this fucking cold state. Like, you know, I treated women poorly. I treated men poorly. I treated every single person poorly. But the worst person I treated was me. Like, you know, like, I say to people, like, I'd give anything to have my mum back and give her life. I would trade mine. you know, because I didn't value mine. So it's so interesting, right? Because sitting here now, me losing my mum, because I look at everything as everything that's bad has something good in it and everything good has something bad, right?
Sure.
So for me, losing mum taught me the value of people. I didn't understand that before. I took everyone for granted. And so for me, I'm like, fuck, all right, in this time where I was just this cold, miserable person, I just shut off. So, you know, all of these people were like, you're so strong, Mickey. You know, I love you because of your resilience and your character. Like, you're the most brave person. You're so courageous.
But really, you're falling apart.
But I was sitting at home just drowning in my sorrows, you know, like praying every fucking night. Like, if you go back and look at my Instagram from like fucking years ago when this was all happening, I would literally write, take me away. Like, fucking let me swap places. Like, I would sit at my mum's grave fucking site and just be like, Mum, like, I want to die. Like, I don't want to be here. And then I got like into the whole bodybuilding world, and I didn't really understand it at the time. And I don't think a lot of people do, right? But it's like so many people that pursue the bodybuilding world use it as a way to self-harm. Because there is no other fucking thing in this world that you can leave yourself mentally, physically, emotionally exhausted on the floor, throwing up, and still go, I'm going to give more tomorrow, right? I hate myself. Fuck this. I've got to be better. Like, it's fucked, but it's the reality, right? And then you put in the cocktail of drugs. So you put all the steroids in and you start to go, all right, no one talks about it because, oh, we're progressive, right? I'm progressing towards my goal. And a lot of your followers are going to hate this because it's the fitness influencer bullshit that
Let's talk about it.
No, we have a mix.
Right.
We have a mix,
So my biggest thing is I call it out for what it is. Like, everyone goes, oh, you know, bodybuilding's progressive and all of this. And it's like, yes, it is when it's done right and it's done in the right way. But when it's done from self-hatred and you're doing it to self-harm, it's no different to the person that cuts their wrist. It's no different to the person that medicates with food. It's no different to the person that goes and snorts a line to fucking feel something. You know, the only difference is that people do not label it for what it is. And when I started like noticing this, I was like, shit, like I'm in too far. And the worst part about when you're in this suicidal, like you have suicidal ideation and you're in these kind of tendencies, is the one thing that used to fucking save you and bring you back is now the one thing that doesn't bring you back, right? And if that one thing you love goes, what do you have to live for, right?
Very true.
What do you have?
Yeah.
So for me, I was like, don't really have a family. I don't have money. I don't have a healthy relationship with anything in my life. I'm addicted to steroids. I'm fucking struggling to just get by every day. And I'm like, what do I have? So, you know, that's when the floor kind of slipped out from underneath me and I become numb. And I have it tattooed on my finger, never love. Like, it was a stage in my life where I loved nobody, I loved nothing, and I didn't want to be alive. You know, and I think going through all of the bodybuilding and the comp prep, like, it saved me in a way, but it also kept me in a very toxic relationship with progression, right? And, you know, I'm not going to go into the parts of like how I've attempted and stuff like that, because I think that's just something that I've learned. It's too traumatic for people to hear. But there's a moment when you go and it's fucking hard, right? Like, and I'm not saying this to be like, it's easy, go do it. Like, it's just fucking hard. Like, if you get to that point where fucking all you want to do is just end it, you're at a fucking really lonely spot.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Like, yeah.
And you've all had your moments. Like, everyone's had their moments where they've sat there in their fucking absolute abyss and gone, it's got to get better.
I was going to say before, like, how numb must have you felt to get yourself to that point? Like, to get yourself right before there and be like, I don't want to be here anymore.
I think when you start to, I was a Tumblr boy. I don't know if any of you use Tumblr.
Tumblr boy.
Well, fuck, it's kind of obvious, right? Like, a fake tan, I fucking bleach my teeth. Like, it's kind of fucking obvious, right? But, you know, and this is where my idea come from. And this is where my mindset comes from. So for me, the thing that happened that shifted everything was when I was going through all of the stuff I was going through, I didn't have anyone out there that was the reality that I needed. Like, no one was relatable. Like, everything was like, if you lose your arm, get a bionic one. I'm like, I'm poor. I can't afford a bionic arm, right? It's a great motivation in school. Like, that's what you get in motivational talks at school. But like, if I lose my arm, like, I lose my arm. I've got to cope with this. I need to understand that. So to get to that point for me was like, it took so long to go through the process of feeling sad, feeling depressed, wanting to die, to then the floor slipping out from underneath you and feeling like you're in a free fall. And I think that free fall is what we all feel, and we don't know how to pull it back. And when you're sitting there, and I would say on death's doorstep, you start to realize something. And what you realize is this: you don't want to die. You just want the chapter to end.
You want that pain to go away.
You just want the character to stop. You want to be somewhere else, and you want the new chapter to begin. But if you want the new chapter to begin, it means that you want the story to continue. So when you're sitting there and you're trying to fucking hang on for dear life and you're like, oh shit, I've really fucked up, right? I said to myself, if I got through this, and I only ever used to pray to mum, I was like, mum, if I get through this, I promise you, I might not get through it the whole way, but I will prevail. Like, may not be today, may not be tomorrow, but I will prevail. Like, I'm not going to give up. And that's what created the mindset. And then I was like, all right, so like, you know, when you're going on Tumblr as a depressed kid and you're looking up depression because you don't understand it, you see some guy hanging from a tree, it just sends you into a negative loop. You go looking for more things, you find song lyrics that relate, you get stuck into that, you know, and so it just all become a very much, I fantasized about it so much. So I had my own funeral planned, I had my own songs, and I used to listen to them all the time. And I actually listen to them now that I'm on the other side of it. And I go, man, you got through that. Like, good on you.
When you look back at that moment of you being at rock bottom and looking at that today, like what thoughts go through your mind in terms of like what was it that allowed you to get on with your life from that moment?
Or was there even like a person that, like, I know you said that you didn't have much people around you to rely on, but like what was the actual exact thing that made you be like,
I need to.
Enough's enough?
I started to question things, and I started to feel like I owed it to my mum, and that wasn't rock bottom for me. So that was just the tip of the, like, that was the start of it really. But that was a moment where I realized that when I did hit rock bottom later years, that I was going to get through it.
So this is not rock bottom.
No, this is setting me up for what I was about to encounter. So this was like my depressive, suicide, grief, like drug addiction days. And so coming from being addicted to steroids, I then went into business, and I had my first business. And coming from the world that I did, like kids like me didn't do business, like, you know, and obviously being in the supplement game, like anybody can really do it. It's not that hard. So, you know, I bought a business, I bought it with emotion. Never buy a business with emotion. Worst thing you can do. Never make a decision based on emotion as well. And it just wasn't my time. Like, simple, right? Wasn't my time. But the problem was that during all of this, I was struggling with a lot of other relationships in my life, which I won't go into detail. I was part of a very toxic relationship with multiple people, and I got addicted to drugs, and I got addicted to cocaine, and I got addicted to pharmaceuticals. And I went through a bad stage of snorting a bag a day, 2-3 bags a day.
A day?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So I did it for about 8 months, and then yeah, like shit just hit the fan. So like the thing is this, like when you're doing it, you don't realize that you're no longer doing it to escape, right? But you're still aware of the habit. And this is the thing, and I say this to everyone. I knew what I was doing when I was driving to the house. Right? I knew what I was doing when I was putting it up my nose. And the thing that made me click, the moment that made me click in all of this when I was losing everything, was I'm trying to escape reality, but when I come back to reality, it's no longer nice water to swim in. It's shark infested. And I'm not escaping anything. I'm just prolonging it all, right? So for me, it was very, very clear that I needed to get better. And I was either going to be my own anchor or I was going to be my own propeller. And when I lost everything and completely lost everything, so this is rock bottom for me, right? So I lost both of my businesses.
Talk to us, what businesses did you like have at that point?
I had supplement stores.
Okay.
So I had supplement stores, and basically I was in partnership with someone, and it just turned absolutely horrible. And all the toxicity in my life at that time, like I was told I was a nobody, I was a scumbag, I was a street kid, you know, I was never going to make it. Like, you know, you deaf and dumb, like look at you, like what have you got to show for yourself? And it really made me question who I was. And that's where rock bottom really hit for me, because it was like, if I hadn't gone through the episode of what I'd gone through with grief and depression, I would never have understood what resilience meant, right? And it's not that I'm going to get through it now, but I'm going to take it day by day, second by second, minute by minute. I'm going to just break it down Not look at the macro, go micro to micro. And if I make it tomorrow, I make it to tomorrow, right? So when all this shit was happening, it became a very, very hard thing to kind of grasp, okay, I'm losing my businesses. I'm addicted to drugs. I've got no money. I'm now homeless. I've now got nowhere to go. What happens, right? And then that's where rock bottom come from. So I had to move towns. I was forced to move towns. And I remember I started fresh. And this is why I say to people, like, I've got courage written on my finger. And being courageous is being you. Just owning who you are, right? And I remember I was standing in the store, like I just started at a new supplement store in another town, and I'm standing there and I was like seeing this guy walk over and I was like, man, you're pathetic. You're a piece of shit. Like, you know nothing. You're a fucking waste of space. And I was like, you know what? Even if I am, fuck it, I'm going to give it a red hot crack, because what I need to do is show myself I can do it. And I was like, fuck, who am I? Am I someone else? Am I Frederico? Like, am I fucking, who am I? Like, I don't know who I am. Fuck, I'm just going to be Mickey. Yeah. Right. And it took the most amount of courage to be Mickey. And it turned out Mickey wasn't a bad person. You know, people liked Mickey. Mickey got along with people. I could connect with people. And I started to be able to do really big business because I have this ability to step into a vulnerable arena and allow people to open up and then help them. And I was like, when I lost mom, I got into the health and fitness industry because I didn't get to keep my loved ones long enough. But I want you to keep your loved ones longer than I got to keep mine. Yeah. And so that was my mission. And so I was like, fuck, if I can just get people talking, this is it. And then it started that I got to basically tear myself down and rebuild myself. And this is when I was sitting up on a hill in Griffith, and it's a massive hill. And it's like, I was sitting there and I was like, this is when I start my brand. This is how I build rock bottom. And I remember telling people and they laughed. They're like, whatever, man.
Was that the name of your brand?
Rock bottom was the idea I had, right? Because rock bottom was, to me, everything I was as a person. It's authentic. It's self-brand, right? So I built the MJK brand and I showed everybody the vulnerabilities. So I opened up on Instagram about sexual assault. I did a video about it and I got a lot of messages from the industry, especially guys, you know, and people were like, fuck, man, like I also had this happen, or, you know, and it was just this open and vulnerability that was just never shared. So that's where rock bottom come from. And then later down the track, I never understood that rock bottom was ever going to be a business. Like, it was just this branding that I'd built for myself, I guess. And then I remember sitting when I got with my wife, and it was like, I said to her, I was like, I think I'm going to do this. Like, I think I'm going to give this shit a go, right? And I sat on my bed and I cried because I was like, I've failed before. Like, I've had 6 figures worth of debt. Like, I come into that marriage, one of you if you seen me then, you would not go, that guy is a green flag, right? Like, that guy is not a green flag.
Red flag.
And that guy's a money pit. Like, I had 6 figures worth of debt, right? At like what? I would have been 27, 28, you know, and I told her that. So, you know, when you're sitting at almost multiple 6 figures worth of debt, I was like, I need to step up because this woman is something fucking else. So I remember sitting with her and I said, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this business and I'm going to register it. And I remember ringing my accountant and saying, like, and she was with me through the mass days. And I said, look, I'm going to do a business. And I said, I just need to just get the ABN set up. And she goes, do you want to register for GST? And I was like, I'm never going to do 75 grand. Like, what do you mean? Like, fuck, I don't know what I'm doing. And rock bottom was fucking built from that. So that's when, you know, I went from 5 clients, 10 clients to 110 clients in a year. And the business paid for my wedding, my house, you know, like that's paid incredible. Back all the debt, you know, I'm now debt free. So like I was able to just channel into this thing that was like, this is my baby. And all the mission is, and the reason that it was so big was because I genuinely just wanted to help. And my thing is, give more than you take. You need to leave something for someone else to be able to have. And so that's what rock bottom was.
And so was the audience of people that you were working with at that time, was it a lot of men and they gravitated towards you because of No, it
was all females.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it's all females.
That's really interesting.
Because a lot of the females would come to me and they would be like, look, I'm not confident, I'm having trouble at home. And I would sit down and I would be the harsh reality that they needed. And I'm like, look, like, what's going on? Like, and they would open up about, you know, oh, my partner doesn't find me attractive. You know, we don't really get intimate anymore. And I would work with them through, and they would go, hang on a second. Like, and a lot of them would say, like, I can't believe I'm talking to a guy about this, but I feel like you understand it more than me. And like I said to you, my bias on all of this comes from reading both sides.
Yes.
You know, I didn't have people in my life back then that could guide me. So I had to read feminist books, toxic masculinity, and form my own perception somewhere in the middle. I agree with this and I don't agree with that, and form that. So for me, it was like, okay, look, I hear what you're saying. And a lot of the females just weren't heard.
Yeah.
Like they were going to coaches and it was just like, yes, babe, get it. Like you're going to look fabulous, you know? And that movement was happening. And then the guys that were coaching them was very like, we're going to put you on 1,200 calories and destroy your menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, brother, no, we're not.
And there's still a lot of that happening now.
Sadly.
Yeah.
So much. I guess you listened.
I listened, right? I listened. So, and I think that's the thing. So for me, I really predominantly coach females. So out of my 110, probably 85 of that was females.
Yeah, wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and a lot of the females that I had, like, you know, I got to share some of their best wins, like their wedding day.
Yeah.
You know, like I remember one girl in particular, and I won't say names, but she come to me and she was so sad because she was about to get married and she looked awful in her eyes. And we got her looking so amazing for her wedding day. And I remember getting the message and I was just like, I turned to my wife and I was like, how fucking good is this? Like this girl is literally getting married and she feels fucking fabulous. Like
That's the best.
I love that
that's
so
amazing,
much.
right?
That's
like,
so nice.
And I think that to me was so much better than the male side because I was like, it's like I'm helping my mother. You know, it's like I'm helping all of the people that I never could got to help before. So for me, no, it was all females really. And then few males. But yeah, it was predominantly females.
That is the best.
That's incredible.
That is the best. Since we are on the topic of females, I now want to bring this to your amazing wife, Ash. And like you absolutely adore her. You talk about her all the time. And it's very, very obvious. It's very, very clear how much you really do. Like you are both so in love. And I just, I'm just like, I love you guys. But she obviously has been your number one rock from like to where you are now, from this, you know, scarcity mindset that you had to this life of abundance now. You know, how has she helped support you and what has it been for like having her in your life to get to where you are now?
I think the biggest thing is we need a real wake up call. And I never wanted to get married. And I said it in my wedding vows, you know, like getting married was just the worst thing to me because like saying that you're going to love someone and then they die or they leave, it's just an inevitable commitment to pain. Like I didn't want to do that anymore.
You just wanted to avoid it.
I just wanted to avoid it. So like I just shut down. I was just a fuckboy. Like I traded, like I wrote this poem once, right? And it was, I traded cheap champagne for company. Like I was just the booty call and that's all I ever was. Like I was never anything more.
And you liked being that?
No, I hated it. But I didn't want to sit at home and hate myself. So I was like, well, how do I get company? I trade cheap champagne and some Russell in the sheets and we're fucking good to go, right?
Good to go, sorted.
So for me, that was my life for a very long time. And it was sad because nobody, you know, the people that I fell for, like they didn't love me because I wasn't lovable in their eyes. Like they were like.
Because you didn't put out that energy either, I guess.
No, because to them I did, but they were like, whoa, man, you got baggage. Like you don't, like I literally had a girl say to me once, like I was very interested. She was interested. And she goes, look, I'm falling in love with you, but you don't have a family. I'm like, it's not really like something I can help, right? Like it's not like bringing something to the table. Like I can't bring a family to the table. But with Ash, and I think this is the most important thing, like she is what I refer to as a feminine energy and a masculine energy combined. And the way I say it is that she's a strong hand with a soft touch. And it was the wake up call that I needed. So when I first met her, we started talking and I was like, fuck, that's a woman, right? Like, and you know a woman, like you it's like girl, woman, right?
Yeah.
I've always liked older women. So like for me, that was always like the thing. And when I met her, I was like, oh shit, like she's a woman and she's around my age, but it never kicked off. We just really got along. Fast forward, when we first went on our first date, we went up and we looked at the sun setting. And I realized something so priceless. And it was that things in life are free. Like, and the most beautiful and precious thing to her is a sunset. And to me, it's her smile, you know, and watching that sunset, like it was the moment for me where it was just like, fuck, like I knew, right? Like I genuinely knew like I needed to get my shit in check. And so we were talking about like where her life was going, what she wanted for herself. And I was like, I have 6 figures worth of debt. Like, you want a house? Like, fuck, man. Like, I just want to be like comfortable and debt free and like maybe just like buy some Oreos at some time. You know, like not worry about like, am I going paycheck to paycheck? So I remember at that time, like after it, I'd saved literally, it was like 20 grand, right? And that was like the most I'd ever saved. And I remember it clear as day. I moved all of it over by $100 and I was like, I've lived on less. Like, and I've still got the photo of like when I went to rock bottom and I was like 6 figures in debt, I had $1 to my name. And I still have that photo because I look at it and it was what got me through it was being emotionally invested in my money. Like feeling like not sad for myself, but being like, you're never going back there. Get tied to this emotion of looking at that $1. And I remember looking at that $100 for a couple of weeks and going, fuck, this better work out. Because if it doesn't, like I'm screwed. Because I put it in like a no, like you can't touch it account, right? And I was like, that's how I knew. Like I was like doing things and then I was like, shit, like this girl or this woman is like, I'm doing things I've never done. And, you know, we both said like, there's a big thing where people say codependency is bad, but co-commitment isn't discussed. And co-commitment is so important because it's one of those things where it's you hold each other accountable to their goals. And she's never ever tried to stop me from pursuing anything I've ever done.
How did she respond to you when you told her like, look, this is my situation. This is how much debt I'm in. Was she like, fuck it,
everyone
let's go?
knew because it was something that I openly put out there because I wanted people to know that like, you don't have to see the world as dark and gloomy just because you're financially despair, right? Like you don't need to be like, oh, the world's going to end because of this. So for me, it was more so she was like accepting of it, but it was also one of those things. I was like, we don't have a future if I can't get on top of this.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was when I started saving and really, really saving. So I was like, when I had the opportunity with Rock Bottom, I remember it like, you know, my first 50 clients at $50 a week, I'm like just putting it all away. And then it was like, I proposed and everyone's like, well, when are you going to get married? And I was like, well, like this year. And everyone's like, how are you going to pay for that? And I was like, I'm just going to hustle. So I just hustled. Like I literally slept 3 hours a night. Like, and I set a gym up in my house. Like, and I didn't come inside. Like I come inside to eat and I just worked, you know?
Yeah.
And I just remember like being able to buy her the ring that she desired. I remember being able to make sure the wedding was perfectly planned to her. And I think the thing with me and her is that she was the first person that ever asked me what it was like after the day. She shows, what was it like the day after your mum died? Nobody asked me that. 7 years, nobody asked me that.
What was your response?
What was it like?
It was lonely. It was terrifying. It was so scary. It was the most daunting thing that you can ever experience. Like, here's a 20-year-old kid that doesn't know how to cook, clean, or wipe their own fucking ass because I was babied. Like, mum babied it. So, you know, you're thrown into the real world and you're also then trying to get a house. You know, you're living on shit money. You've then got like bad mental health running in your family that you're trying to protect and nurture, but it's rubbing off onto you, you know? So like, it was one of the most scariest times. And when I said that to her, she just hugged me.
And you weren't close with your dad at this point too, were you?
I don't talk to my dad.
Yeah.
I don't even acknowledge I have a dad.
Yeah.
So I don't think any man that can lay hands on a woman is a man.
Yeah,
and I don't
absolutely.
And the worst thing is I went back because I believe everyone can change because I've changed. But I said to him, why did you do what you did? And he goes, she just got under my skin. You have had a conversation with him? Fucking oath. I'm not allowed near him, but, you know, he said
that's for another day.
Yeah, that's for another day. But, you know, the biggest thing was, I was like, if he can own why he did what he did, 100%, I'll listen. And he goes, she got under my skin. And I was like, yeah, bro. I said, never, ever, ever step fucking foot in front of me.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I'd see him down the street and he'd run away. But with Ash, she was the person that first ever hugged the little boy inside of me. And that's what it was. Like, when I first ever hugged her, I just felt like that little kid that was standing at the front office, saturated in their own urine, that everyone laughed at. I just needed a hug.
You just needed that.
I just needed a hug. And she was that for me. So, you know, I proposed instantly. We were married instantly. And I planned to spend every single moment of my waking life with her. And I'm eternally devoted to her because nobody has ever given me that. And that's why I work so hard, because for her,
you do it for her.
I want her to be comfortable.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck about me. I've been uncomfortable. I've been homeless. I've been fucking anything you can think I've done. So for me, it's like I want her to be set up.
Did she have a similar, well, not similar, but was her upbringing?
No, definitely not. But it's really interesting, right? Because I don't have family and because my EQ is really high, I observe things and I pick things and I look at things and, you know, the things that I used to see as the perfect family, it's not the perfect family, right? It's like my mum gave me emotional intelligence and I am so fucking grateful for that because it was something that I got made fun of for such a long time. It's now the reason I'm a national sales manager. It's the reason that I can sit in meetings and I can, you know, connect with people and do all of this cool stuff. Like people will meet me and they're like, I feel like I've known you for years.
Yeah, 100%.
I got that from
100%.
Yeah, we met in the store and it was like, I was just like randomly down the back wall and you were just like there and I was like, started chatting and then it was like, we didn't stop and I was like, every time I see you at the gym, I'm like, fuck, look away.
We literally have to look at each other at the gym and be like, not today.
Yeah, it's eyes.
It's going to be easy today. I am here for 2 hours otherwise.
That's the best.
Yeah.
That's the best.
We just give each other like, yep, I know you're there.
Yeah, literally.
But seriously, I think all of this obviously has had such an impact on the person that you are today, and you make such an impact on everyone else now with everything that you post as well. And particularly, I think what I want to mention is, the relationships that you now have, because for someone who didn't, you weren't nurtured as a child. I mean, after your mum died, you didn't have anybody. So like, how do you cultivate those relationships now? Like, how do you have those supportive relationships? Do you pick and choose very wisely who's in your life?
Look, when I lost everything, I remember it clear as day. There was one mate, right? And he's written on my hand, Unbreakable. You've met him. I think you've probably seen Turner. Have you seen Turner? Yeah, Turner. And I speak about him with my whole heart. I love that guy to death. And he was with me when I had nothing. You know, he watched it and he helped me. And I remember when I moved to Griffith, I couldn't afford shoes, right? So I remember I had these dirty ass, ratty ass shoes. And for me, one of the biggest things that I take a lot of pride in because I couldn't do it as a kid was my appearance. People go, oh, it's for ego, it's this. It's like, no, man, like it's just I had to spend a lot of years uncomfortable in my own skin. I'm willing to go to the extra effort now, right? And so he bought me a set of shoes. And he sent it to me and I'll never forget it. I opened it up and it just had this little note and it just said, I can't imagine walking a day in your shoes, but here's a new set.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And,
that's so sweet.
Like to me, like I was just like, I'd never had that, you know, I'd never had that. And for me, I was like, this guy's a stand-up guy.
Relationships like that are so important to have as well.
They are, 100%. So he, you know, like people go, oh, the bullshit, man, this didn't happen. I'm like, ask him. Like even my wife, she was like, as if. Like your life's like a movie. And I'm like, ask him. And it's just because I connect with people and I get dragged into shit. And because I just wanted a family and to belong, I got stuck in a very dark side of life with some really bad people because it was like, they were family. They open their doors, they let you in, they respect you, you know, like, but they all want something from you. So for me, all of my friendships now was if you were with me when I had nothing, I'll give you everything now I've got something. And so for me, when I moved to Melbourne, this is really funny. Can't believe I'm saying this out loud. I created a rule and Jose hates the rule. And the rule was no new friendships, right? No new friendships. And he was like, you can't say that. He's like, what do you mean? You can't just say no new friends. And I said, no, it's simple, man. I said, I don't have time for my immediate circle who require the best of me. How am I going to water myself and nurture myself, take care of the immediate people and bring someone else new in that's like, I love you for who you are now, but who you were, disgrace, that's a disgrace. And that's what I see. People come into my life and then they hear about old me or they meet someone from my past and they're like, oh, yuck.
Yeah.
And it's like, cool.
Bye.
Catch you later.
Do you find that you like when you do let new people in, you struggle to trust them or you struggle to let them in?
I give everyone trust. And if you betray it, catch you later.
Yeah.
But no one's close. Like I've got a triangle of friends. That's what I call it, like a triangle. And it's like they're my people.
Yeah.
And because I'm so busy, like I work fucking 90, 100-hour weeks.
Yeah.
Like it's not like I have a lot of time. So when I'm not working, I'm with my wife and that's priority one. And if I'm not with her, I'm then growing because I need to be better. Because my whole thing in this life now is to be the person that I need. To be better for tomorrow, to be the person that I needed yesterday. Because the more that I evolve and the more that I grow, the more people I can help. So for me, it's like she comes first, my growth comes second, and my immediate circle comes next. So someone who's going to come in, what do you want to do, bro? Do some curls in the gym together.
Yeah.
I want to train. That's my self-care time.
You got shit to do.
I got shit to do. Like, so, and you can really quickly catch on to who's with you just to be on the coattail.
For sure.
You know, and like, I see it. Like, I'll walk into the stores and, you know, no one wants to buy with you. And as soon as someone says, oh, that's the National, and they're like, oh, you know, and it's like,
what's going on?
Yeah. Do you think I could get a sponsorship? And I'm like, definitely fucking not.
Do people ask you that straight off the bat?
Oh, you see my inbox. It's fine.
Really?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so we get a lot. Like when I'm at a sale day, I love
a lot of them like Instagram influencers.
No, definitely not. They're just random people. Like literally, like you'll just get random people that you meet, and they're like, "I love the brand. I'd love to be sponsored." And I'm like,
absolutely not.
That's great. Like my inbox is just like when I travel. Like literally, that's why I created a rep page and I separated my personal. It's like if you're on my personal, I care. If you're not on my personal, there's some people that are on there that have been there for years that I just don't remove. I just don't go through it.
Yeah.
But then like if you're new to it, like I've got like 170 people that have like sitting there just waiting to be accepted. And I'm like, not today, Susan.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know you. Why do you need to see my wife? Why do you need to see my life?
So that's your private account.
It's my private account because like for a long time, and I guess this is where this leads to, like I opened myself up and I was an open wound for everyone else. And I felt like a lot of people dealt with their grief faster, their addiction problems faster, but they picked at me and then left my wound open and then just moved along. And then I was sitting there and I was like, oh, fuck, like this is bad. Like I got all this trauma to deal with. And then when I left rock bottom and I started with Primer, I was like, I no longer need to do that. You know, this is the next step for me. And Primer to me is being able to go out there and do what I was doing on a local level and then doing it as a state level and then doing it now at a national level, which is helping people.
Yeah.
You know, we're helping to take back the decline of people's health. And I truly believe that's the brand. I believe that's the mission, and that's why I'm so like committed to it. So yeah, like my personal one is very like if you're on it, which you both are, you know, it's I care. Like if it's not, like it's like I don't know you. Like what do you want? Because I know what's going to come. You're going to like a few things,
get your attention, and then yeah.
So yeah, that's where it's funny.
In terms of like your mindset. Like your mindset's obviously very different now than it was back then. Do you ever find that like the little boy mindset that you had where you didn't believe in yourself, do you ever find that creeping back in?
I think now it's evolved into imposter syndrome.
Okay, yeah.
And I think
we spoke about this the other day.
I get that really bad as well.
Look, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think the people that I see achieve greatness and success, you can either use it as a weakness or as strength.
Yeah.
And it's like the people that usually have imposter syndrome are probably the most skilled and the most valuable people at the table, but they've gone and refined their art to another level because they're so scared that they're like going to be exposed. And it's like, exposed for what? Like you're capable of doing what you can do.
We've literally had this exact conversation about it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, everyone's just winging it. No one cares more than you do.
Agreed.
No one cares more than you do.
100%. And
even if you do fuck up, again, no one cares that you fucked up more than you did.
100%.
That's so true.
Yeah.
And if you don't fuck up, and this is the thing, right? Like all my failures, and the reason I talk about them, because everything I failed from, I've learned from.
100%.
But when I've won,
what
I'm
do you
like,
learn?
make it rain, let's get drunk, fucking buy dinner. Like you do not learn a lesson from that.
You get told how good you are, and that's all. And you learn nothing from it.
That's correct. 100%. Yes.
Crazy.
What's it like now? Because obviously you had your own business and now working for someone else. Because a lot of people are always wanting to like leave working for someone else to work for themselves, and you've done it in the reverse.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm curious to know, do you ever miss your old business, rock bottom?
Look, for me, I think it's one of those things. Everybody is stuck in this passion loop, right? Like everyone's like, if you're not passionate, you're dying.
Yeah, bad.
Like it's you don't have to be passionate. You just need to find your purpose, and sometimes that's not your own thing. Like it's very stressful doing your own thing. And if you go and do your own thing, it's all on you. And I was very, very confident in doing my own thing, but it wasn't the mission. I didn't have the vehicle. I didn't have the canvas big enough to do what I needed to do on a bigger level. And I think so many people are like, do your own business, you're going to be successful, right? Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. Like everyone you speak to these days, they're like, I'm a coach, I'm this, I've got this side hustle. And I'm like, the biggest thing I say to people is I see people who say they work 12, 14, 16 hour days. What did you achieve? Like if you're working 12, 14 hour days, like unless you're closing like 100 grand's worth of sales and you're in sales, like great. If you're a coach, like if you're just spending making content that goes nowhere, Well, refine the marketing process. So for me, I left because I'm happy to be a cog in the wheel. Like, I don't need to be the guy that stands there and goes, this is my business. You know, I just need to be the thing with Primer. And I've said this to everyone. I don't need to be the main thing. I need to be a part of the script. You can't write the story of these things without me. And so that's so important to me because it's like anything that I do, if I can be part of that script, and I think that's what people don't understand. They want to be the person at the front that gets all the applaud, but they don't want to go through the stuff when it goes bad.
Yeah.
You know, and that whole passion loop, I'm just like, dude, like, I get it. Like, I'll literally get voice audios and it's like, man, I just want to leave my job and like just do my own thing. And I'm like, why? And they're like, because that's where my passion is. And I'm like, no.
I think if you do something that like, even if you're working for someone else, but you feel like a sense of
fulfillment
and you feel like what you're doing is actually adding value, doesn't matter what it is. If you feel like you're adding value to something, then
100%.
That's all you can really
I used to always say passion over a paycheck.
Yeah.
But you've also got to have purpose.
Yeah.
So when I closed Rock Bottom, which was a multiple 6-figure business for 45 grand. That's what I took Primer for, you know, so I started on 45 grand and I grew my role.
Yeah.
So for me, it was never about the money. It's never been about the money. It's always about what you said, the fulfillment, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
It's so inspiring. I think I want to now get into like the strategies that you do now with helping people with their mindset. Because I think now, because of all the growth that you've had for yourself, like you read a lot of books, you're very invested into personal growth and development. So like what kind of things do you prioritize on the day-to-day? Like what is your personal development time? What do you allocate each day to work on you?
Okay.
And what are the specific things that you do?
Okay. So it started out of, because I couldn't read as a kid, like reading is very daunting, right? Like it's very like, most people pick a book up and they go, oh, this is hard.
Or being pulled on in class, like, hey, read this.
Yeah, that's the worst. We were saying that the other day. It's like when you read the menu and you're like, and someone's like, and then you're like, remember when you were a kid and it was like, you were like pre-reading and you'd get up to your bit and you'd be like, like you just freeze, right?
I think that has put trauma in a lot of kids.
So bad. Like that moment you're like, I have studied this book, I'm ready. And then fuck. So bad. So for me, look, it started with the whole 10 pages a day and again, addictive personality, right? So I was like, well, 10's great, but what if I could do 20? And it's like, all right, well, what if when I've got time, when I've got downtime, like waiting for an appointment, I take the book with me. So I was like, all right, well, what if I could read 50 pages? And I was like, what if I could read a chapter? What if I could read two?
I love this.
I need to ask this. I've got a serious question. How long does it take you to read a book? Because I feel like you read a book in a day, like a book a week. I feel like you read.
So at the moment, it's very much like if I'm like, I arrive early, right? Like most people don't arrive early, apparently. So not putting anyone on show there. But like for me, I arrive early to most things because I think it's very important to be punctual.
For sure.
And so for me, like I'll take that 10, 15 minutes and I'll read. And a lot of people go, oh, you couldn't be executing this. So my thing is this. Out of every book, I make sure I execute one thing from it. And I don't highlight a book. And everyone thinks this weird, right? They're like, why don't you highlight? And I'm like, I take photos. Because at any given moment when I'm struggling with something and I need to bring it up, I just bring it up in my phone and I go, cool.
Do you have a folder?
That's a great idea.
I do. So like all my books I've read, it's just like my phone is just like bang, 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 bang. So for me, if I've got a weekend off, which is pretty rare, like I'll sit there and I'll read. Because my wife, she loves to watch trash TV and I genuinely think that is the most boring, mind-numbing shit. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So I would rather read. And so for me, like I'll read at the moment, like last month, like I read 9 books.
I was going to say there's been a lot lately.
But they're not long books as well. Yeah, but they're not long books. Like most people think like when you say reading, right? And this is the bit I love because everyone goes, you're not reading that. And I'm like, well, whatever, mate. Like I don't care. Like the thing is this.
Reading.
Yeah, literally. It's like they're 250 to 300 pages.
They're not Harry Potter books.
They're not Harry Potter. I'm not reading Lord of the Rings, guys. You know, it's 300 pages. Like in most books, you can get through pretty quick.
Okay,
you know?
yeah.
So like 300 pages, most of the things aren't full pages either. So, and the things I read, like they're things I'm interested in. And you know yourself, when you're in a flow state, when you're in that moment, time just passes.
Yeah.
You know, so like for me, but that's the biggest thing I say to people when they say, I don't have time to read. I'm like, take the book with you.
Yeah.
Because how many times are you sitting waiting for something and you doom scroll?
But read something that you actually you enjoy too. Don't force yourself to read something else, because then you read
100%.
2 pages and you're like, I'm done with it.
Look, everyone says to me, they're like, you know, the whole thing of like, I set a mantra for the year. So the mantra for me every year has to align with what I'm going to do. And so for me, meaningful work, meaningful relationships. To be meaningful in what I do, I need to understand how to control and regulate my emotions. I need to understand how to be disciplined, how to be courageous, how to let my ego go. And these are all things that in my day-to-day life are all things that I meet at second to second. You know, you meet a really bad time where something goes wrong and the first thing you want to do is put up the ego and protect yourself. It's the worst thing to do. You know, so I read a book, Ego is the Enemy. And it was like, you know, understanding that when people go, I don't have ego, it's like literally put some AirPods in your ears and put on your favorite song and watch the soundtrack to your life come alive. You change the way you walk, you change the way you stand, you change the way you talk.
How fucking true is that?
And you change your perception on the world, right?
That's so wild.
So now,
Is that why you asked me the other day, what's your favorite song?
Yeah. Because so many people, and it suits you, right? Like it's such a crazy out there song. Like I was like fucking typical.
What song is it?
It's Anastasia. I'm out
Of course
love.
you said that.
Yeah, literally, right? Like,
It fucking brings the best out of me.
When we were doing our
It
posing
actually does.
together, we actually did that song together.
We
It was
did.
like
We
a
were the-
whole new person.
Yeah. So, but that's how you know ego's a lie. So I stopped walking into meetings with like pre-listening to music. I stopped sitting in certain areas with music in because it changed the way that I was going to actually go into that next thing. So now I sit in silence or I read because it's like,
You're becoming present.
I'm becoming present, right? And it's like stillness, it's like composure, it's equanimity, it's temperance, it's understanding that like all of these things matter. But if you're not actually doing the day-to-day, so for me, the biggest things I do is training is vital. I really only train now for the mindset and the piece of like, do the hardest thing first, right? There was this quote and it's called, if you were to eat a frog, eat the toad first thing in the morning, which is basically do the most hardest thing in the morning and everything else is easy.
Yeah.
So training is that. Like it's training and then I will come home and I'm usually working. And then if I get a chance, I'll read before bed. But if I get a chance throughout the day, I'll make sure when I do have some time in between a meeting or I rock up early or whatever it may be, I just read a couple of pages, you know? And I think that's very important. Journaling. I'm very big on journaling. I've journaled ever since I lost everything.
Yeah.
That's what got me through, you know, like my suicide days. You know, I started writing and the piece that got me was journaling's really fucking hard. And a lot of people go, it's too hard, like to get to the point where you actually start writing. And I didn't write anything on the page for a week and I got really mad because I was more angry, depressed than sad. And I just remember ripping the book up and just fucking, you know, and I was like, went back and one day I just wrote, you are resilient. And that was a moment I knew I was going to prevail. I was like, all right, so if that's the case, like you are resilient, you're going to get through it. So like now it's like journaling for me is more about finding out why I am the way I am. Right? Why I do things the way I do, why, you know, or celebrating the things that we do. Like when I'm sitting on a plane and I've just had a fucking 16-hour day and I'm like coming home and I'm like, I get to see my wife. The hardest thing is I'm so dead tired. I'm so excited to see her, but there's a breakdown because I'm just like, ugh,
You're a zombie.
Yeah.
right?
I'm curious to know when it does come to journaling, because so many people I think want to get into it, but they're like, I don't know what to write. So what would be your first piece of advice as to how someone can start? Like what kind of prompt would you give them to like really start getting deep into like their thoughts and to unpack like the shit that's in their head?
I think get a self-prompting journal, like getting something that asks you a question like who is Mickey? Who is Kayla? Who is Georgia? Like all of these things, like nobody asks. And the thing is, we're so hit by dopamine every second that when we go, this is hard, dopamine makes me feel happy, right? Scroll, happy. Rather than being like, okay, think about it. Like, who is this person? You know, and most people, when you ask them these things, like, what do you want out of life? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Like, if I asked you that now, could you answer it? You know, what does 10 years from now Kayla look like? Or Georgia look like? You know? And I think self-prompting journals, like I got the Daily Stoic this year because for me, that's the whole temperance and equanimity, you know, and really trying to find composure in just breathing and taking a step back and focusing on what I can control, not the externals. And so for me, that's my journal. So I read one line a day out of the Daily Stoic and then I have the Daily Stoic journal and it's been amazing. It's like I'm a different person because like when shit goes south, I go,
It is amazing what breathing can do, though.
This is literally what we're speaking about last week.
We were speaking about this last week because you've started getting right into breathing and
it's one thing
and stuff.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to focus on is like, because like I get like a lot of anxiety and I feel like my mind takes over, and then once it takes over, I'm just like, and I can't think about what I'm doing. So it's like if I can just take a second to just breathe, and I can just think a lot more clearly. I can just come to the table and just have better conversations. I can feel like I can be myself better.
Coming back to yourself is what
coming
you
back
said.
to coming back to myself
100%.
more. It just like it snaps you out of it. It snaps you out of it.
100%. And I think anyone who has experienced panic attacks and things like that, it's like the hardest thing is once you think about it, it becomes worse.
Yeah.
And so it's like you become so hyper vigilant and you become hyper focused that it becomes such a problem because you're like, I'm going to be okay. No, I'm going to die. I'm going to be okay. I'm definitely dying. Oh, my heart rate's up. Oh, I'm sweating. Oh, my pupils are, it's like, you're gone. By that point, you're gone.
Domino,
Yeah, right. So yes, breathing is so important. And I think for me, because a lot of my things were anger issues and I had so much resentment and I only touched the world with hate after mum died, was just breathing and just going. So for me, what I do is I breathe out really hard, and I'll do it in a lot of like people won't know. And it's just you go quiet, you just breathe out, you push on your abs, and your mind goes, oh, that's tense. And then you forget what you were kind of mad about. And then you just go back to normal because everyone's like, breathe 5, do 5 deep breaths. And I'm like, imagine being like angry at someone and go, hang on a second. Hang on, I've got 3 more. Don't you interrupt, right? Like 3 more and we're good. It's on. So like to me, it was like, I need a quick way.
Yeah.
And because my life is so fucking fast, that was something that someone told me. And I was like, when I heard that, I was like, oh, that works. Because your mind just needs a break. It just needs literally bang. A semicolon.
Shift it quickly.
Yeah, literally. So, yeah.
Okay, so breath work for you, journaling for you, training in the morning. Is there anything else that really helps you just level up with your mindset?
I think music is so important to me because for so long it was all I really had. And I think when you listen to music and you really feel the lyrics and you just take yourself back to those times. And there's a song that I used to listen to, and it was the song that I always said was going to be my funeral song. And it's called I'll Be Good. And when I listen to it and I can see who I was like, man, look at who you've become. And that's why I have the tattoos on my hand. Like trust yourself. Never love. The other hand side's going to be endless love for Ash. But that reminds me that I got through. Yeah. My mum and her death date, Unbreakable is my best mate. And courage is literally like, be yourself. Like trust yourself, be courageous, step forward. You're going to be okay. You've got this, right? Like, and I think so many people don't understand that. And it's like, for me, music is that. Like, it just takes me away and it just puts me in a place where it's like, I forget about reality. I look back and I go, you got through it.
So when you are listening to music, it's usually a song that has some kind of significance to some part of your life, or not necessarily?
A lot of the time, like I listen to like heavy screamo. So like for me, it's like, it's very like people like, it's like rah, rah, rah.
I could imagine that.
I was just about to say, it's definitely not any R&B or hip hop, because a lot of it's all about fucking and getting money and fucking bitches.
And that's what turned me off it, because I used to love to dance. That's how I found drugs, because it was like, dancing and you're going out to a nightclub, you take a pill, you're like, oh, these mics are mad, and so like, I was like, this is sick. This is great. The come down's not great, but this is great. And then when I found metal, like it was like through Tumblr, obviously. Depressing lyrics, right? So Tumblr boy things. But then like now me and my wife, we go to concerts together and we love it, like, and you get to see this really nice, just beautiful side of people that just all can be safe in their own environment.
It brings people together.
It brings people together. Like, I love metal. Like, I go to their concerts and I'm like, man, I am the weirdest looking. We stand out. Like, we had a guy, like, we were at Amity and the security guard goes, oh, are you sure you're in line for the right concert? And like,
you guys are here for this.
Yeah, like my wife's got like blonde fucking hair. She's tan. She's like, and like, we look like we're going to like an R&B concert or something. I've got like a fucking satchel bag. I look like, Mo, don't worry. And the guy's like, he's like, are you sure you're not in the wrong line? And I was like, no, mate, like we're here, But it was really hard for me to openly admit that as well, because everyone would say, oh, you're depressed because you listen to that. But that saved me, because I didn't know that anyone else felt like me.
Yeah.
Like, because I didn't have anyone. So I couldn't be like, what does depression feel like? And then when I started hearing these songs, I was like, oh, that's me. But I also like really like, obviously because emotional, right? Like really singer-songwriter kind of songs that just like sit you down and just go, oof. And like, I literally advise you, like, listen to I'll Be Good, because it's all been a moment where we've looked in the mirror and we go, today's going to be better. I'll be good. And then you come back to the mirror that night and you're like, I fucked up. You know, the devil got me today. Yeah. And that's the song. And it's like, you know, that was always my thing. Like every morning I'd wake up and I'd be like, I'm going to be good today. But then I'd just let my mind completely go. As like now it's like I pull myself up. I journal, I listen to music, I train. If I'm frustrated, like I know what to do, you know?
You just honestly, all of the things that you do, it just makes you so much more self-aware.
100%.
And then it allows you to interact and engage with people better because then you start observing how other people are not so self-aware.
Yeah. And you can have deeper connections with people, better friendships. 100%. You show up better for everything.
That's the thing. It's like if you're in my circle, it's not surface level.
Yeah.
It's substance. If you're going to talk about people, go that way.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about things and what you've got going on and everything like that, this is the table for you.
For sure.
You know, and that's how I, like when you say like with like self-love, like I'm very protective of that, because if you let in, you're one bad decision away from making one of the worst mistakes of your life. Just like you're one decision away from making the best decision of your life. You're one bad person away from making the worst friend of your life, or you're one person away from making your best friend of your life. And that's my best mate. Like when people ask me why he's so close to me, when I was sad, when I was depressed, when I was angry, when I was suicidal, I used to look at him and be like, I'm going to be that one day. That's what happiness looks like.
Yeah.
You know, and I look at that smile and I'm like, man, that makes me happy.
And it's easy too, like when you're around people that all they do is, again, last week, go back and listen to last week's episode. But what we spoke about is like when you hang around people that are just constantly bitching, you inevitably get caught up in it too. And then 100%. You become that.
Yeah.
So it's just like if you don't want that around you, fucking get rid of them. Get rid of them.
If you hang around people, and I had to learn this the hard way. You know, one of my mates said it to me when I got away from the world I did. He's like, mate, we're all heading in the same lane and it's all going to the same destination. It's okay to overtake. And I was like, oh shit. Because he goes, if you don't overtake, you're going the same place. Yeah. And I was like, that's just not for me.
It's true though. You are a product of your environment. And even like I've noticed that because I just hang out with completely different people to what I did when I was younger. And and I'm just like, if I were to hang out with those people, I would have absolutely not a single thing to talk about with them. And it's just crazy.
It'd feel very mundane too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think some people do get caught up in those relationships where it's like, I've known this person for so long and they feel like they have to remain friends with them. And it's like, why?
Yeah, there's no obligation. I think there's seasons in life and everyone's got a season, and I think people have an expiration date, and it's like a lot of people think that it's like a bad thing if you grow and you evolve and you unlock a new character.
It's like when people say, oh, you've changed.
Yeah, and it's like, great, I'm glad you noticed, right? But it's okay to not hate that person because you've changed and they don't see the value in you anymore, because it's they wanted you for who you were.
Yeah.
They never wanted you for who you're becoming, and that's okay. And I've learned that. Like I've lost lots of mates over the years, and the biggest thing was like, everyone's like, do you get mad about it? And I was like, no, they served their purpose. They were there for the season. Everyone's got an expiration date. Like we're all going to die. Like, sad.
No,
depressing.
but it's true though.
It's reality.
100%. It's a paradox of life, right? We're all so fucking afraid to like die. We're also so afraid to live. So, yeah.
Where do you find the happy medium?
The balance,
exactly.
Which say balance doesn't exist.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Should we get into our rapid fire questions?
Yeah. So you don't know these.
Okay, perfect.
And
so how many have we got?
We've got 14.
14.
Okay.
So we're going to, it's the first thing that comes to your mind. You're not going to ramble off. Whatever comes to your mind, that's what comes to your mind. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Do you want to kick it off, Kayla?
All right. First question. A piece of advice you would give your younger self.
Failure is okay. Failure is a part of the journey. You learn from your failures. You don't learn from winning.
I love that. Is there anything that you regret?
Yes. The way that I didn't actively love my mother as a child, but even when she was just alive. And if I could do anything right now, it would just be to give her a hug. Like just to give her a hug and just tell her like, you did the best you could. And I'm so fucking proud of you. And I'm so grateful. And everything you went through, all the cold nights. Like I remember watching my mum like literally sleep in a fucking, sorry, she slept on a lounge because she was scared to sleep in a bed because of like what happened with dad. And I watched that for years and I'm like, you were so lonely and you chose to be alone to protect us kids because you were so scared that we would be hurt. And I think, you know, if I could just tell her like how grateful I am and just give her a big kiss and a big cuddle, that would be my thing. So my biggest regret is I didn't do that enough when she was alive.
No doubt she's looking over you and knows how grateful you are.
So then your piece of advice is to tell everyone to go home and say how much they love their family.
I think that's the biggest thing I have. I think I make people love their parents more and love the people close to them, because you don't know how much time you've got. And death has no calendar. Like, it can go in a heartbeat. And yeah.
Love it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. What is your biggest ick in the entrepreneurial space?
Oh, there's so many.
Start.
I guess one of the biggest things is that, like, people want to make it overnight. Like, people think that you should just wake up and just be rolling around in money, that there's no, like, up, down, sideways, down. Like, all the books I read, there's all been a moment where there's an abyss, right? There's a moment of rock bottom, because you learn from rock bottom. And I just wish that more people would put it out there. And I wish more people would say, it's not going to be an overnight success story. You know, like, people go to me, rock bottom was an overnight success story. It took rock bottom and 5 years of building MJK to be able to create a platform where I could sell to people. You know, and like, people go, oh, but you only had like 2,000 followers. It's like, yeah, but all you need is 100 people that want to listen and buy into what you're saying. And the thing is this, a leader isn't a title. It's someone who gets people to follow them. And if you have 100 people that are willing to follow you to the point of sale, you're going to make money, right?
Yeah.
So my biggest thing is, I just want people to be real. Like, it's not an overnight success story. It's not fucking easy. Most people do have an abyss, and most people do not talk about the failures anywhere near enough. And it's only becoming more and more prominent now, because like guys like Ed Milet, Andy Frisella, you know, Alex Hormozi, they talk about the loss. But before that, right, they don't. So to me, I think the biggest stick would have to be that. Like, people just think like you get a Lamborghini when you just go, I'm an entrepreneur. And I'm like, man, where's that? Like, I want that. Like, that's a killer. That's a killer starter pack. And you also get a Rolex, and you get to like fly around the world, and you know,
Dressed
you work
in
4 hours a day.
They are your biggest icks.
Oh, mate, anyone who says I want to work 4 hours a day, you ain't working 4 hours a day. There's one day where you are literally headbutting a wall for 24 hours to work 4 hours a day. Like, it does not exist. Like, there's always one day where you're working more than that. Like, fuck.
Without a doubt.
What is your favorite book of all time that has significantly changed your mindset? One.
Can't remember if it's called Stumbling into Happiness or Stumbling onto Happiness, but it was what taught me to move to Griffith, because I was so scared to move, and I had nothing, and I had literally like nothing to lose, but I was so scared. Because the thing is with humans, like, if I throw this cherry at a dog, right, the dog's like, bang, it's like, yes, and then you throw it again, it's like, bang, it's like, yes, do it again, bang, right? You do it to a human once, hits you, you're like, fuck, don't do it again, throws it again, you move, right? Humans have this pattern where they can pick up on, and they expect something to happen from a certain thing that they do. So for me, it was like, it's basically what taught me that you can basically control your happiness by focusing on the now. So doing today rather than focusing on tomorrow. So it was like, that's why I always say, it's like, focus on the micro, like the second, the minute, the day, the week, the month turns into a year, right? And so that book honestly was like the one that just completely changed the way I see everything.
Repeat the name again.
I think it's called Stumbling into Happiness or Stumbling onto Happiness.
You're going to find it, and we're going to put it in the show notes.
Yes.
And then our next follow-up question, because I know that you've got way more than one book recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay, 3. We need 3 book recommendations.
Most of them are by Ryan Holiday. Like, the Stoic stuff is just so good, and he's just such a good author. One for self-development is going to be Obstacle is the Way. And that basically talks about, you know, you need to have an obstacle in your life. And when you actually identify that obstacle is the path forward rather than the path backwards, because most people see, you know, the big ass mountain and they go, fuck, that's way too hard. But all the steps up it to get to the summit, that's what teaches you how to keep climbing other mountains, right? So Obstacle is the Way. It's the way forward. I love that book. The second book, which would be a business book, would be, I'm going to say Leaders Eat Last, because it's really important for people to understand what a leader means, right? And it is humility. It is knowing that I play no part in my team. It is them. Like, at the end of the day, how we perform is based on them. And they get the celebration, they get the recognition. It's no longer about me. And that was the hardest transition from a high-performing sales rep to that's all ego, right? But then when you flip it to then being a leader of a team, it's no longer about you. So Leaders Eat Last was really, really good for that. And then the third one, and I would say this is a new book that I'm reading, is going to be Good Inside. Like, I think for anybody who, whether you've grown up with, you know, trouble in your household, or you want to be a better parent, or you've got a kid and, you know, or you're about to have a kid and you want to be a better parent, like, this book is just an eye-opener on, like, just emotional regulation, dysregulation, how the household works, you know, how a kid thinks, like the things you should say, the things you shouldn't say. But it also is the reality check that you shouldn't be so harsh on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, anything we do, right? Like, we care more about our own fuck ups than anyone else, but we're so harsh on ourselves that we stop ourselves from growing because we're like, oh, we didn't do it the first time.
Ain't that the truth?
So what's the name?
It's called Good Inside by Dr. Becky Kennedy, which is also the name of my sister. So it's like, when I picked it up, I was like, did you write this? Like, this is weird. And I was like, you're not a doctor. I was like, this is fake. You're a fraud.
You are a fraud.
This is imposter syndrome. Like, you're really bad. But no, it's a really, really good book. I've just started reading it. I'm like 50 pages in and I just don't want to put it down. But I'm taking my time with it because meaningful work, meaningful relationships for me is like...
You actually want to absorb what
100%.
Yeah.
Like, this is something that is so important to me because I'm so scared to have a child. And like this morning, and my wife doesn't even know this, so she's going to hear this here first. Like, I'm ready.
She does listen to the podcast.
I love it.
I'm ready. Like, I read a piece in it and I was like, I'm not a screw up. Like, I'm going to be able to do this. Like, I'm going to make a good human and I'm going to be able to contribute to this world. And you know what? Like, yeah, the world is fucked. Like, I'm not going to lie. But the world was fucked years ago as well. And we're here and we're doing this, right? Like, it's okay. Like, if you just think that perfect exists, you're never going to start.
And at the end of the day, all a child needs is love.
100%.
If you're in a healthy, happy relationship with your partner, that's all the child needs.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. It's like, and the book talks about it, like, you know, showing the system is do your job. Like, for the parent, it is to allow the kid to learn, explore, and to be able to learn how to regulate their emotions and feel safe and secure. Mm-hmm. And that's like, that's the parent's job. And the kid's job is to do all of that. So when they're learning and they're curious and they're exploring all their emotions, like, of course it's going to to be. You know what it's like? It's fucking messy in my life. Like, I'm like sitting in the car crying, next minute, woo, let's go. Energy drink, and then I'm like sad again, 9 hours of driving, you know, all the emotions I feel like it's a fucking train wreck.
Yeah.
So how do we expect a kid not to be like that? So,
for sure.
You know, I think that book is definitely going down in 2024 for the rest of my life. Like, that's a great book.
I love it. And what's your go-to podcast?
Oh, I'm going to say that would have to go to either Ed Milet or Andy Frisella. Mm-hmm. They're both like, I love people who swear. I love people who get down in the gritty. I love people who love like mental toughness, hustling. I love hustle culture. And I know everyone says it's fucking, you shouldn't do it, it's toxic. And it's like, mate, you know what? So sitting on your fucking ass and wishing for something, right? That's toxic. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to get what's mine. And if I don't get what's mine, at least I fucking gave it a go.
You know, and if it works for you, fucking
hustle culture 2024.
Do what works for you. So is that your mantra there for us? So I know actually you gave us a mantra earlier already. So let's restate it. What is your mantra that you religiously live by? Or a quote, whatever.
Leave people better than you found them. And I think in any capacity. Like, I remember, and this was a moment where I really fell in love with my wife. Like, I seen an addict and I was going to put money into the ATM and I had a 50 and I had a 20. And I looked at this guy on the floor and I was just like,
was it the guy at Durham?
No. What is it like? Okay, like that's another level. That guy, like, he genuinely, like, I don't know if Durham sponsors him to be there. Like, they should put clothes on him.
Every time.
He shows up, man. Like, he's about the hustle culture of being a bum. Like, he's going hard at that life. But I remember I walked into the ANZ ATM and you know how they shut them off, like in small country towns, they shut them off, right?
Yeah.
But they still open. And I was like, man, how vulnerable, how exposed are you? Like, and everyone's like, oh, but they're high. And I'm like, would you want to be out there, have someone kick you to death, piss on you? You know what guys are like? They're like, oh, I should do something cool. Let's piss on him and film it. Like, and I just was like, you know what? I gave him $20. And I looked at my wife and she goes, why'd you do that? And I said, because it's his choice of how he spends that money. I said, but I know that I wanted to escape, and if he chooses to do that, fuck, that's up to him. And she was like, yeah, babe. She goes, I love you for that. And so for me, it's just about leaving people better than I found them in any capacity. You know, whether it's I listen to them, whether it's that I can give them a little bit of health advice, whatever it is, just leave people better than you found them. The world needs more of that.
That's a
Definitely.
That's
I
a
love
great
that.
mantra.
Yeah. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in 2023?
In 2023?
Yeah.
23 was like a monster year. So I'm going to say, though, the biggest thing.
Because I know throughout your life you've got a lot, but as of just last year.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I would say the biggest thing is this. I learned being able to climb to my like level that I have in my career so fast. Like most people, it's 10 years, right? To do what I've been able to do. And it kind of sounds like I'm bragging, but it just happened. And it happened because I like hustle culture, right? Like I lived in Albury, I drove to Melbourne, like literally to do my job. And so the biggest thing that I would say with last year is people play finite. They play like it's an end point, right? You get in a relationship and you stop trying. You think, oh, I've arrived. You've arrived at what?
I've got it now.
Like, I've got it now. Like, I don't need to do things. Like, I say to my wife, like, you know, if you don't find me sexy anymore, fucking tell me. Like, why? Why don't you find me sexy? Like, what is it, right? And then people are like, oh my God, that's so harsh. I'm like, no, because at the end of the day, like, people say they arrive. Like, it's like you get the title and you stop doing the things that you did to get the title.
I
like,
saw you say this the other day.
Yeah, like, I think it's so important. Like, there's a finite and infinite, right? And the infinite game is playing it out like you haven't got it yet. And that's the way I see it. Like my wife, she's with me now. If I stop showing up, if I stop being present, if I stop loving her loudly and audaciously, like, does she go somewhere else? Because that's what she got at the start, you know? And it's the same with like friendships. And it's why I'm so like select with who I bring in, because it's like, well, once you arrive at that destination, people just lose interest. Right? They go, oh, well, I'm mates with him now. Or I'm mates with her now. You know, oh, I had dinner with her. Like, I don't need to do it again. You know, and it's the same in relationships, business, anything. So to me, it's switching my thinking from finite to infinite. You know, and there's like marriage is an infinite game.
Yeah.
You have to keep showing up. You have to keep getting better. And that's why I'm so invested in self-development, because Ash deserves the best fucking human that I can possibly be. And if I'm not watering that every day, that's not okay.
Can you teach this to more men?
I was going to say, how do we find more of you? We need more men to think this way. What would you say the biggest misconception is about mental health?
Oh, this goes way back, way back. So one of the biggest things is this, right? When people say, oh, just be happy. It's like, would you say to somebody in a wheelchair that's got a broken leg, just walk?
Yeah.
Right? I know how to be happy. I dated a girl once, and this was the saddest reality for me. She had the perfect upbringing, but she just had a very, very, very bad chemical imbalance. And the day that she tried to kill herself was the most saddest way of explaining I've ever heard. And it was basically, she went and got her favorite CD, right, which was Adele. So she listened to Adele in the car, didn't do it. She was like, I love roll-ups. I'm going to go get roll-ups, right? She went and got roll-ups. And when she was walking through the aisle, she started crying. And it started, because it becomes really hard to control what you're going through. And it's like everything doesn't make sense, but to them it makes sense. And so she went and got a roll-ups and didn't help. And then she walked down the razor aisle. She sat in the car, she listened to Adele, she ate the fucking roll-ups, and then she tried to kill herself. Completely fucked herself up. And it breaks my heart. Like, it still breaks my heart. Like, it's one of the saddest stories, because everyone goes, you be happy. It's like, we know how to be fucking happy, right? You can't say to somebody in a wheelchair, walk, right? It doesn't work that way. Just because you can't see mental health doesn't mean that it's not there. And that's the thing. It's like, it's the invisible fucking killer. And I almost got fired in one of my jobs, and I don't know where we stand on COVID, but for me, at the time, I had a lady come into the store and she goes, aren't you scared of like this thing? And I was like, yeah. I said, you know what? I like think about killing myself every day from like this invisible monster. And I said, so it's no real different to your COVID. And she was just like, I need to speak to the manager. I was like, I am the manager. And it just, didn't go down too well. So I think the biggest thing is that, like, because it's invisible, it's not there, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, well, fuck, tell the guy in the wheelchair to walk.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so true.
It's like
so
anything though. People know what they need to be doing, but they just don't do it.
Correct. 100%. Yeah.
All right. So your go-to thing for finding peace or clarity?
Definitely journaling. I love journaling. Like I used to write poetry nonstop, but I just don't have time because it just takes it takes a lot.
Do you have a recollection from your memory of a poem that you've written?
Yeah, I wrote one and it actually went into a school because it was about domestic violence. And it was basically about like that the flowers only come and the sorry only comes after. Basically, like, and I represented like the rose and the thorns being the guy's hands around the throat. Because it's like you only say sorry and you only give me flowers after you've abused me, you know? So it was actually, like it was all like I used to write and I used to expose it all, but it was just one of those things that like the more that people got out of it, the more that they use it against you. And it was then a part that I was like, well, this is now a piece for my wife, you know? Like, so like with my wedding was very poetic, like my vows and the way that I made the movies. So like when I was engaged, like that was a poem and then that led into the wedding, which was like the vows and that all lined up. So,
that is so sweet. Yeah.
I love that.
I think writing's very important because what here is and what's here are two different things. And when you start writing it, you're like, fuck, this doesn't make sense. Like, you know, so you get to have that kind of like buffer between what is real and what is not real.
Yeah. And it's also good to put out exactly how you're feeling, like journaling, putting 100%. Out exactly how you're feeling and just you can articulate your emotions a lot more.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Because it's just that different, like the level of like higher self, lower self.
Yeah.
Right? Like lower self is just like, I feel like this, and then it's like gets a thought and you just run with it. And then it's like your brain tries to pick up for that clue and hint everywhere it goes. And then it's like, it must be real. And then you write about it and you're like, that's not real.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And it's sometimes when you look back on it too, like there's times where I've looked back on stuff that I've journaled and I'm like, I almost start crying again because I'm like, is that how I really felt? Like, far out.
Yeah.
That's like that 5-year journal I said. I was like, what the fuck was I thinking on that day like 3 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. That's actually a really cool thing like that. When you said that, I was like, oh, wow, I've never heard of that.
It's so cool.
I couldn't do one line though. Yeah. As you know, I talk a lot.
Yeah.
Sorry. I think this podcast has gone way too long.
You know what's funny? We came in today, we're like, max 60 minutes. What are we hitting at now, Peter?
40.
Hour 40. That's right. We're nearly there.
Not too bad. What are we? Last question.
If you could collaborate with anyone in the health and wellness space to do business or to do anything, what would you do? Or who would you collaborate with? And what would you do?
I'm with who I would collaborate with.
Yeah.
I'm Primabolics through and through. Like our mission is to change and reform Aussie sports supplements and to stop this whole high stim bullshit that's out there. Like it's about health. Like health and fitness is first and foremost about health. And if you don't understand that we're all just spinning plates, and at the end of the day, when your health goes, you can't spin any more plates. So if you cannot fight back that decline on health that's happening with poor sleep, poor nutrition, like every part of supplements become more about that than it did the health side. And so for me, I'm through and through. Like I'm here. Like that's why I closed my own business. Like, you know, I wasn't earning anywhere near as much as what I was doing with that. But I knew that one day I was like, I'm going to be able to do this at such a bigger level because I'm out here on like blank canvas. I can paint for the rest of my life on this thing, you know? So for the next 10 years, like this is where I'm at. Like I don't need to collaborate with anyone else. I don't this is it.
Yeah. I love that.
We want to collaborate with you. Is that what it's about? So what is one last piece of advice that you would like to provide the listeners with?
I think
the final takeaway message.
I think the biggest thing is it's okay to put your hand up and reach out for help. So you're not weak. You know, like when I did my mental health seminars, I called it the strongest, weakest link because everybody that I met that was seen as strong was carrying this big ass boulder behind them and they were strong for everyone else, but they were really the weakest link. And a lot of the mates I've lost to suicide, you know, they were the strongest people. You'd never pick it in a million years. It's okay. Like it's not weak to speak, you know, like it's okay to open up and be vulnerable. Like vulnerability and stepping in the vulnerable arena, as Brene Brown says, like it's the most beautiful thing in the world. Right? Like what we've had here is the most beautiful discussion. And hopefully that someone out there can go, you know what? I'm going to share something that makes me feel really icky. Like, and the biggest thing is this, like you almost feel like hungover when you first expose the vulnerable truth. You know, when I first exposed to people, like all the stuff that I spoke about here, like sexual assault and stuff like that, like I felt like I was going to throw up. And that's the beautiful part of it, because you're putting it out into the universe for other people to connect to. You know, you're a naked shell. And I think that's my biggest thing. It's like, it's not weak to speak. It's not you. And especially if you're a man, like if you're a man and you don't talk about your emotions, you're not any more manly. And I think the biggest thing is, and this is something that I want to leave this with, is men are so focused on, you know, being like, we don't need women, and women are so focused on we don't need men, that they forget that like it's not about that at the end of the day. Like it's about the connection that two souls have. And whether that's a man and a female, whatever it is, right? It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, as long as you have somewhere to go home to, that's what matters. And to me, if I never spoke up, like I would never have my home. And my home is my beautiful wife. Like every time I finish, like knowing when I hop in my car and I get to go home and I'm like, and I walk inside and I'm like, baby, I'm home. Like this is home. Like, and mum used to say it when I was a kid, like home isn't 4 walls and a door. You know, it's 2 arms and a heartbeat. And that's my wife. And it's, I wouldn't have had that if I didn't speak. So it's not weak to speak.
I love the way you talk about her.
I
love the way you talk about her.
We definitely need to find men males
I know.
like that.
We ask all of our guests that come on the podcast. This podcast is obviously called Evolve to Thrive. What do you think people can do or implement in their day-to-day life to allow them to evolve and thrive each day?
If you care so much about your fuck ups, care more about your success.
Yeah.
Invest that level of care into being successful. And that does not mean the accolades. It means the growth. It means the journaling. It means being a better human than you were yesterday. It means being 1% better every day. And not just for you, but for the people in your life. You owe it to them. Like I owe my growth. I owe my success. I owe who I am to my beautiful wife, to my resting mother, and to my future children. I owe this to them. So I no longer care about my fuck ups. I invest and I am so focused on being better. And that level of care, that's why you succeed, because you put that level of effort and energy into succeeding. But you know that if you fail, it's like, it's just part of it. Keep moving forward, you know? So I think that, like, I think honestly, like people would thrive so much more if they put that same level of effort and energy that they put into how they see themselves or perceive themselves in this world if they fail, into succeeding.
Yeah.
And you don't have,
you
don't have to change the world day to day. If you're 1% better each day, it adds up.
Yeah.
This has been such a great conversation.
I know.
Like, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
But before, like, obviously we want to be able to give the listeners your details because trust me, you want to be following Mickey because he puts down a lot of daily wisdom, a lot of quotes and a lot of things that will help you evolve. So what are your socials for them to reach out?
Well, I just said my private one's private, right?
I was about to say, but don't put your private one there.
No, look, it's if it's something that, you know, the people feel they can connect to, and, you know, like the whole thing for me is that, like, I've got so many people that, like, will send me a message. It's 2 a.m. and they're like, you know, I just went through your Instagram and I'm choosing to live again. And you're like, fucking what? Like, that's really intense. But that's why I post, and that's why I've kept all the things. And recently I went through and I deleted a lot of shit that I was just like, it's just filler, you know, like my fuckboy era, because it's just not needed, right? Like, but the journey is still there. So if people that feel like they can reach out and have a chat and just want to have a chat, you know, like, I'm happy to. So MJK092, that was the brand, and then the underscore, because that was my way of trying to separate myself from being found, because it was like, everyone's like, okay, MJK092, and I'm like, now it's an underscore.
No, sorry, I thought you actually did have another account that was like your one.
Yeah, what? I
like,
think you had one.
I don't know, business. Well, Primabolics.
Yeah, no, because rock bottom's gone.
Yeah,
so and rock bottom was never the mental health side, because you can't do it. Because if someone messages your page late at night and they're suicidal and you don't respond, like, you're liable.
Yeah.
So, like, for me, I could never. It was always my personal. Like, I couldn't do it as a business. So my self brand was this side of it. And then that's when I started talking more about, this time, like, about business and growth and love and the happy after stuff, right? Like, because I want people to go back through and go, fuck, if he can do it, well, fuck, man, if he can, I can.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
anyone's capable of doing it. So, yeah.
For sure.
MJK092 underscore. I'm like, naughty steps.
Sorry in advance. No creeps, please.
Yeah, no creeps. No
I think
creeps.
there's a lot of people that are going to resonate with this and you're going to be able to connect with. So We apologise in advance if there's heaps of people that reach out to you.
At the end of the day, we hope that, I think that a lot of people will take value from this, and
sure.
hopefully they can implement one little thing into their life moving forward to then, keep becoming better and better each day.
Thank you, girls, for having me.
Absolutely.
It's been awesome.
We've loved having you on here.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.